we're going to move on to Sophie Jullien, who's going to talk about some aspects of community deworming, Vivian, that has been part of some of our lives for some years. I think I've been updating this review for about 20 years. I know lots of details about the research and the researchers. In fact, I know that one of the lead researchers on a study that was published about 30 years ago actually had a relationship with his PhD student, and his wife was so angry she wrote a book and it was a bestseller. And I don't know how the research synthesis specialist I found that out. It's not referenced in the review, however. But we do. But the point is that you do get to know the reviews and the trials very well, and this is a topic that Sophie's picked up, and one aspect that she's going to describe now.
Thank you, Paul. Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm Sophie. I was working, as Paul explained, in the UK for the consortium for 1 year. I was involved in the index TB guideline that my colleagues will present next, and in this project, very interesting worms. So this is where I currently live. On the top, this is Bhutan. So when I told to my friends that I was moving to Bhutan, some of them, I think they wished I had kind of a map in my forehead, because they were kind of asking me, so where exactly is that in Africa? I was like, no, this is not in Africa. So Bhutan is a tiny country which is in the Himalayan mountains, locked between China and India. And you may know this country because it's internationally known to be the happiest country in the world. So these students that go to school every day with their national dress are known to be the happiest children in the world. So I was wondering myself, can these children be the happiest children in the world with that, with worm? So everyone knows that if a child has worms, even if they are Bhutanese, they are South African, it doesn't matter, you treat. There's no discussion about that. The question is whether, do we need to treat all children for deworming every 6 months? So this is what we know as mass drug deworming. Mass drug deworming is a periodic deworming of all school children. We just treat, it's cheaper than test and treat. So this is the reason behind these programs. This was a log frame that was summarized in the Cochrane Systematic Review. So basically, deworming programs are claimed to improve nutrition, to improve cognition, and to increase hemoglobin. So as a consequence, you will have an increased physical well-being, an increased intellect, and that would improve school attendance. And then the impact of this program would be to reduce mortality, to improve school performance, and therefore to increase the economic productivity of the country, to reduce poverty. So that sounds kind of amazing. A tablet of albendazole can have all these consequences. So I was not the only one amazed, apparently. So WHO recommended since 2001, they recommended mass drug deworming in all the settings where worms were in a high prevalence. So they are strong advocates for these programs that was widely implemented. And just to give you an example, Japan's economic success was attributed to the deworming program they had in the 1950s. All right? So these programs have massive investment by several donors, including the UK government, USAID, Gates Foundation, and others. And it also represents huge national government efforts. So for example, India last year treated more than 179 million of children. So all this money, which is allocated to these programs, as you will realize, will not be allocated to other programs. So in 2000, this team of authors actually conducted a systematic review that questioned this statement. So they looked at the reason behind these deworming programs, and they looked at the effects of these deworming programs in the community level on growth and cognitive aspects, And actually, they found that there was limited evidence on weight gain and none on cognition. So that was in 2000. And over the years, as you are very aware, the systematic review will integrate the most recent trials. So this is the last update published by the 5 authors that you can see in this slide in 2015. And they found that there is now substantial evidence that mass drug deworming doesn't improve hemoglobin, cognition, school attendance, and death. So their conclusion is that it is probably misleading to justify contemporary deworming program based on evidence. So as you can imagine, in between there has been a hot debate that is known as worm wars. There have been lots of controversial topics, discussion about this topic. But mainly the main criticism of the Cochrane review is that the trials, including systematic review, looked at short-term benefits. And what are the long-term benefits of this mass drug deworming? So this is what we decided to look at. So we conducted a systematic review to appraise the long-term study examining the effects 10 years after the drug deworming trials. So these are our results. So we found 3 long-term follow-up studies, the 3 that you see in orange, that were follow-up studies of these 2 big base trials. So the first trial, Miguel, was conducted in 2004 in Kenya, which included more than 30,000 school children that were dewormed every 6 months. And that has conducted to this bird and Aussie trials studies that I will explain you. The other one is Alderman, was conducted in 2006 in Uganda, that also included almost 30,000 children, younger, that was also dewormed every 6 months. So these 3 papers are 3 papers that have been quoted a lot and that has been very, very influential for the policy behind these deworming programs. So the bird one and the croak one, so we have 2 studies, the bird one, this one and this one, they are looking at some children that were involved in the base trial that receive at most 2 additional years of deworming. And the one in the middle, Osier, looked at 10 years after, so they look at the children that were actually too young at the time of the trial, meaning that these children actually did not receive any tablet of albendazole. They were just exposed to the spillover effects of deworming during the first year of life. So what we found, I'll explain you some aspects of what we found in doing this critical appraisal. So we found multiple versions of these papers. They were long economic papers, very long, up to 80 pages without counting the supplementary material. They were unpublished but available online, several iterations of them with results that vary between versions, and we could not find any protocol for any of them. Another result we find is multiple significance testings. What does that mean? So in BIRD, for example, in the first version, we found out that they explain us 228 outcomes, but then over the years and over the versions, these outcomes increase up to 650 outcomes. So is that great because we have more information about that? No, this increases the risk of false positive reports, false positive results. So for example, in the abstract of 2012, suddenly we have this statement that Kenyan women who participate in the program as girls have fewer miscarriages. So when this is not at all in the previous versions, as a result of at most 2 more years of deworming tablets, I think my reaction was a little bit as the one you can see in these children. Another finding was post-hoc subgroup analysis. So in the following version, they look at subgroups, subgroup of subgroups, mainly so they will disaggregate data between among externality benefits within 6 kilometers out of school. Another huge concern was about selective reporting. Again, as an example in BERD, there is good evidence of no effects on nutrition, but this is absent in the abstract. About credibility, I said it a bit earlier, are these effects plausible after maximum 2 additional years of deworming, 10 years after the deworming? So some infants even did not took the tablet, they were just exposed. So overall, the conclusion of our work is that there is no credible evidence to support the claims of long-term effects attributed to these mass drug deworming programs. And as a final slide of my conclusion, I just would like to share with you that I really enjoyed applying this critical appraisal to the development economics literatures. I was really surprised by the extent of the iterative data trolling, and I was also very surprised by discovering that policies are based on facts that are taken for granted without appropriate appraisal. Karinchela and Tashidele.
Thank you. Thanks, Sophie, for your presentation. We've got an opportunity for comments or questions. Excellent. So you can just move to the microphone. Thank you.
This is a great session. Vivian Welch from Ottawa and the Campbell collaboration. So Sophie, just wanted to say congratulations on a nice presentation, and really brave to apply critical appraisal in this kind of politically contested area, And I guess my comment is, and maybe Joseph might have comments too, because it took a very long time before your evidence was adopted into WHO guidelines. So a comment is that people aren't ready to accept evidence that challenges their beliefs or their positions. What are your thoughts on how we convey that message better to the people that are making these decisions?
Sorry, repeat the last sentence.
So the question is really how you convey the message about your findings to people at the WHO. Maybe Joseph wants to weigh in on this too, and to organizations that aren't ready to accept your message.
Thank you very much. I'm not sure how we need to convey the message. I really agree with you that when we found evidence that support what people want to listen, they are very welcome. When there is evidence produced that goes against what is already done, it's very difficult to convey. I don't know if Joseph wants to help
Well, I think from our experience, I think you just have to keep the lines of communication, open. Well, the thing with I think with science in all is that as it evolves, the strength of the evidence actually continues to improve, and people would have to listen, because there's. I guess over that period, there's really a growing awareness that it's not so much of what one expert thinks, but what actually the evidence that is published says. So I think it's a long process, takes quite a lot of patience, but you would have to keep on engaging with with policymakers, and eventually the evidence does speak eventually.
Thanks, Joseph. Karen?
Yes, Karen Steingart, also with Cochrane Infectious Diseases Group. I'm just building on the former question, and also, Sophie, just really enjoyed your presentation. It's just really brilliant. What is the current status of the situation with deworming? Can you just fill us in on, has there been more acceptance of your findings? Where's the dialogue at now?
So I'm not sure about where is the dialogue at. So what is currently done is still following the WHO recommendations, which are actually adopted in most of the national guidelines. So as an example, in Bhutan, they fully believe on that. It's in their guidelines, it's very well established, and this is what they do.
The only thing I would say is that a guideline group in WHO met last December, and I don't think the guidelines are out yet. The proponents have turned it into a human rights issue now. So,
Oh, okay.
so I think the narrative is changing somewhat. But
Great, so we'll take one more
Yeah.
question.
No, it's a short. Well, I am Gladys Fava, Mexico, and member of the governing board of Cochrane Collaboration. It's only a short comment or answer about Vivian's question and the response of one of our speakers. First of all, thank you very much. There are very good presentations. But I would like to emphasize that we must not expect too much about the immediate application of our knowledge and the results that this kind of studies, so valuable, will bring to the society. We have a big number of examples in the history that evidence-based medicine for many years has discovered many results that were applied in the clinical practice, for example, 10, 20 years after. So the margin of application from the society of our contributions must be very well viewed in a very long process of the history, because the culture is a long process to introduce new patrons of conduct, of lifestyle. So I think that the importance here is that we are bringing new knowledge that open other options, and how society will apply, this is a process that must take time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for that comment. Really highlighting the importance of patience and persistence in putting forward the evidence.
20
Thank you.
years.
Yes, keep going. Thank you, Sophie.